Good evening. We're happy to be working with the Sharia Crime Stoppers Action Line program once again. And as you know, my name is Mo, and you can call me, well, my name is Mo, so you can call me Mo. And we have Eliza Jane with us. Eliza Jane, hello.
Hey, Mo. How are you doing tonight?
Doing great. We're going to jump right into the interview. We're very fortunate to have attorney Robert Muise from the American Freedom Law Center with us tonight. And he's going to be talking about a complaint that he's filed against the Attorney General in the state of Michigan. She has formed a hate crimes unit and is identified that she will use the Southern Poverty Law Center to identify haters to be followed, monitored, etc. And Robert Muise is on the list. So Robert, thanks for joining us. Please come on and give us some background about yourself, and we're going to talk about the lawsuit.
Great. Yes, it's great to be with you. I'm the co-founder and senior counsel of the American Freedom Law Center. We are a nonprofit public interest law firm. We handle civil rights cases all across the United States, mostly defending conservative Judeo-Christian values. I founded the Law Center with my colleague, David Yerushalmi. David is an Orthodox Jew from New York. I am the Catholic guy here in Michigan. I have 12 children, as I like to say. They're all boys except for 10. So the motto of my home is, blessed are you among women, as people would say. So we created what I think we could say is the nation's first truly authentic Judeo-Christian public interest law firm. We founded it in 2012. And as I said, we handle cases all across the country defending the free speech rights, free exercise rights, Judeo-Christian values. A little bit of my background, prior to getting my law degree, I served on active duty in the Marine Corps as an officer for 13 years. I took an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. After the election of President Clinton, actually, I became more aware of what was going on politically, and I was more concerned about our domestic enemies. And I realized that a lot of our values were being eroded in the courtrooms. And so I came home one day, and I told my wife, and even though the Marine Corps was my entire career, what I want to do for my entire life, my dad was a Marine, 2 other brothers Marines, I told her I'm going to go to law school. And she was shocked, so I kind of had a change in my career, and I actually went to law school while I was on active duty as a captain at the University of Notre Dame. Graduated, and I've been doing this type of litigation, defending our constitutional rights against domestic enemies in federal courts for almost 20 years. I've never had a desire to be a lawyer. I don't particularly care for lawyers, which is why I tend to describe myself as not necessarily a lawyer, but as a Marine with a law degree. And so that's how I approach the type of litigation that I do and that David and I do. And we're pretty aggressive. Just give you an idea of some of the cases that we've done and why, as you indicated, we're on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate list, and that being because we are, quite frankly, we're successful. We're successful at defending those conservative Judeo-Christian values, which the Southern Poverty Law Center dislikes. And so, like, for example, in Michigan, we recently won a case, Bible Believers versus the Wayne County. Amazing case. And in that case, the Bible Believers went to the Dearborn Arab International Festival, one of the biggest Arab international festivals in the country. They went there with signs that were critical of Islam, and for exercising their right to free speech, they were attacked by members of the Religion of Peace, a mob of Muslim youths that literally attacked them with stones and bottles and rocks. And then when the Bible Believers complained to the Wayne County sheriffs, the senior official there, told the Bible Believers that they had to leave or they would be arrested for disturbing the peace. And of course, the leader of the Bible Believers turned to the Wayne County Sheriff and said, well, what about all these people that are throwing rocks and stones at us and engaged in criminal activity? So they had to leave under threat of arrest. We sued. The district court judge upheld their rejection, saying that the threat of violence was sufficient to suppress their right to free speech, which is known as a heckler's veto. It's absurd. We appealed to the Sixth Circuit, 3-judge panel, and in that case, the panel ruled against us, 2-1. Judge Clay, who is an African-American, a liberal judge, had been around for a long time, He wrote a scathing dissent. He understood the importance of protecting the right to free speech, particularly against those who are bent on doing violence to suppress the speaker. So he wrote a scathing dissent, and we filed what's called a petition for a hearing en banc, which was granted, a rarity. They're seldom granted. In fact, you probably get a better chance of making a case to the Supreme Court than getting an en banc, meaning the entire court. So now I re-argued the case to a 15-judge panel, and we won. And the author of the majority opinion was Judge Clay. And quite frankly, it's one of the best free speech decisions, and it's an en banc decision, so it has a great weight and precedential value. And we won on every issue: free speech, free exercise, equal protection. So it's those types of cases that we do, defending Christians, particularly against the hostility of Islam or those who want to side with Muslims. Just one other quick example, and just kind of give you a background of why the SPLC apparently considers us to be a hate group. We represented Pam Geller and Robert Spencer and the American Freedom Defense Initiative, their group, who are also marked and designated by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And in a case that we just won this past September in the Ninth Circuit, of all places, there was an ad campaign that the State Department was running. The State Department has this program called Rewards for Justice. See something, say something. If you have information leading to the arrest or capture of a known terrorist, you can get a reward. So they ran a bus ad in Seattle, Washington, that was called The Faces of Global Terrorism. And it had 16 faces of the FBI's most wanted global terrorists. Well, CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and other pro-Islamic Sharia groups complained because they considered it to be hostile towards Muslims, because every face on the list was a Muslim or a Muslim-sounding name. Well, you look at the FBI's most wanted list at the time, they had 32 most wanted global terrorists. Well, 30 out of the 32 were people who engaged in terrorist acts in the name of Islam. The other two, by the way, one was a Black Liberation Party, and the other one was an environmentalist terrorist. No right-wing conservative Christians on the list. So anyway, so the State Department, being politically correct as it is, pulled the bus ad. So Pam and Robert ran the very same ad. Faces of Global Terrorism, sponsored by the American Freedom Defense Initiative, had the same images from the FBI's most wanted list. The ad was rejected, and we sued. And it went all the way up to the Ninth Circuit, and they claimed that it was demeaning or disparaging toward Muslims to have faces of global terrorists who happen to be Muslims. And so we sued, we won. The court found that appropriately so, that the restriction was viewpoint-based. I mean, that's just a snapshot of hundreds of cases we've handled, but likely cases why the Southern Poverty Law Center considers us to be a hate group, because we're defending the constitutional rights of political views that are fully protected, but which they disagree with.
Robert, let's focus a little bit on just the challenges that you face, the depth of navigating the waters of the justice system. I know, for example, sometimes when you bring a case to the state, maybe a state like Michigan, there's a loss, and then you move on to the next level, at the next level, the Sixth Circuit, etc. So it's not just writing a case. And by the way, I'm aware of specifically you only take cases that you really do your homework on. But the asset we're talking about here is a group that understands the law, understands how to progress through the law, and set precedents. So I think most people are not aware of all the detail that goes into building a civil case, for example, and getting it through the legal system. I'm aware, for example, that you've had cases where you represented individuals who were sued, for example, action was taken against them because they objected to the building of a mosque. And so I know about the Pittsfield case, and I know you're engaged in the Sterling Heights case. These are critical cases that reflect the ability for individuals to speak freely. It's quite a unique skill set that you and David Yerslami bring to the efforts of free speech.
Yeah, thank you. And the thing, when you look at these cases, most lawyers aren't going to take these cases.
That's right.
One, the people who we're defending don't, have two nickels to rub together. Many of them, we're nonprofit, meaning so we don't charge a penny for any of our legal services. We rely totally on donations, and so a lot of these clients. And one of the things that I want to make a point is that David and I couldn't do what we do if we didn't have courageous clients who are willing to put their name on a lawsuit, and stand out in the public light and say, I object to this. This is a violation of my rights. So we obviously are then become the the voice for them, and become sort of the the weapon side of it in terms of using our legal skills. But it still takes the courage of the individual plaintiffs, like those individuals in Sterling Heights you mentioned, who were standing up to the construction of a mega mosque in their largely Chaldean Christian neighborhood. This mosque totally violates the zoning regulations, but political correctness and everything being what it is, the city caved in, and then so these private citizens, many of them Chaldean Christians, who objected to this, they have a home, they don't want this giant building in their residential neighborhood. They have to deal with being named as Islamophobes and bigots and everything else. All the mudslinging comes along with it. So it takes courageous clients who are willing to stand up and fight. And like I said, many of them, they can't afford the what a law firm like ours would charge in the private sector, because many of these cases, as I indicated, even with the like the Bible Believers, that went all the way up to en banc. Those cases take 3, 4, 5 years sometimes to complete. But one of the benefits, like for doing civil rights litigation, is that we can often, when we win, we will get recovery of our attorney's fees, which then goes back into the hopper to bring more cases. So the 2 cases I mentioned with Wayne County, for example, after that was all said and done, they paid us $300,000 in attorney's fees. The King County in Seattle, Washington, in that AFDI Faces of Global Terrorism case, at the end of that case, they paid us $200,000 in attorney's fees. So not only does that help to fill our coffers to allow us to continue to represent other people pro bono, but it also is a little bit of a stick that makes them think twice the next time they might want to violate the constitutional rights of any one of our clients or anyone else who might engage in that type of speech activity.
I think that's a really good thing for us to realize. It requires you to be so selective in the cases that you take. It requires you to have plaintiffs who you feel confident in their credibility and their ability to stand the pressure and go all the way through the process. These are multi-year processes, including the one that you mentioned in Sterling Heights. By the way, we want to be real specific here. You are defending in the state of Michigan, your lawsuit, which we're going to talk about. You're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for the other 30 people on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate list that apparently the Attorney General intends to monitor and potentially harass. And by the way, we are directly connected because we are on the list. So in that list, the Sharia Crime Stoppers is on the list as an anti-Muslim hate group, Southern Poverty Law Center recognized, and other groups that we participate with, like the Southeast Michigan Tea Party, are also on that list. So it's very, very close to home. Let's talk about the lawsuit in Michigan if we can, and what you're trying to achieve with that lawsuit.
Right, and let me just make one point, because you brought up a good point. As I stated, we're a public interest law firm. So while we do represent clients in specific cases, one of the bases for us to take a case, and quite frankly, it's under the IRS regulations as well, which allows us to be a charitable organization, is that it's not just a private dispute between 2 individuals or 2 parties. It's a dispute that has a public interest. It goes beyond the rights that we're protecting when we're defending, Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer, or the Bible Believers. Certainly, we're defending their rights in that case, but that case has repercussions well beyond just those individual parties, and we're protecting the rights of a much broader group, meaning we're defending the constitutional rights of the entire public. And so that's why it's in the interest of the public. And so same with this case. Back in February of 22nd of this year, the Michigan Attorney General and the Director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights announced an official policy directive where they're going to create this so-called hate crimes unit, whose focus was going to be on of going after criminal activity. They're designating a full-time prosecutor and a full-time investigator. And they said in this public announcement that they are going to be relying on the Southern Poverty Law Center. They had hyperlinks in this official announcement, which appeared on the government website, to the Southern Poverty Law Center's intelligence report, so-called intelligence report, that they issue every year, and to the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate map. And when you look at both of those documents, as you mentioned, your organization, but the American Freedom Law Center, when you go to the hate map of Michigan, the #1 group listed of the 31 listed is the American Freedom Law Center. So she's made it very clear that she's going to come after these groups. And even in that announcement, which is so shocking, is the director of the Department of Civil Rights said that they're going to keep a database on all these groups. And an example that they used expressly in this announcement was they said there was this Patriot group that was handing out literature in Lansing during President's Day. Well, that is a fully protected activity under the First Amendment. But yet, if you engage in that kind of activity, or any activity that expresses a political viewpoint that the Michigan Attorney General and the director of the Department of Civil Rights disagrees with, you're going to be subject to surveillance. You're going to be subject to investigation, and at a minimum, your name and your group and their activity is going to be kept on a database. I mean, this is a page right out of George Orwell's 1984. I mean, this is the thought police going after you. And just a little side note on the Southern Poverty Law Center. Southern Poverty Law Center, at one time, decades ago, did legitimate work. They helped to bring down the KKK. But they've become the propaganda ministry, and I use that term very specifically because that's what Joseph Goebbels and the Nazi Party used. This is a propaganda machine of the hardcore left progressives. It's George Soros funded, and unfortunately, because the Democratic Party now has become that, it's the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party.
Right.
They spew hatred. They spew lies, falsehoods. They are purveyors of hate. In fact, they have $500 million in assets, reportedly. That's $500 million for people who are keeping count. And they have somewhere in the neighborhood of $120 million parked in offshore accounts. You got to ask yourself, what is a nonprofit doing parking, $120 million in offshore accounts? I know Tom Cotton has recently called on the IRS to do an investigation of them. So this is a powerful, powerful private organization that is engaged in political propaganda of the worst kind. And you always see the so-called mainstream media relying on them because they tell a narrative that supports the narrative that the left-wing media wants to support. So they kind of work hand in hand. So they convince, for example, Amazon. They have this Smiles program where you can contribute to charitable organizations. Well, you can't contribute to the American Freedom Law Center because Amazon specifically relies on the Southern Poverty Law Center list to exclude us. The Southern Poverty Law Center tries to prevent banks from doing business with us, from cutting off credit cards. I mean, it's really insidious what they're doing. But it's one thing for a private organization like the Southern Poverty Law Center to spew their nonsense and malign us falsely. But now when the Attorney General of Michigan, the top law enforcement officer, when you think of all political positions, the Attorney General, whether at the state level or at the federal level, they have to be objective. Right? That's an office that requires there to be an equal protection of the law. They need to be apolitical. Well, not our Michigan Attorney General. And you saw what happened with Holder at the federal level. For goodness sakes, we're still seeing the repercussions of the deep state in the Department of Justice. But she is now, like Eric Holder did at the federal level, she is now weaponizing the state attorney general's office. So for her now to rely on the Southern Poverty Law Center to target groups using the resources of the government, she's now putting the government's imprimatur on this political propaganda nonsense. And because now the government's involved using government resources to target us, to surveil us, to malign us publicly, which she already did on February 22nd in their press release, that now triggers our constitutional protections, which is why we promptly filed our federal lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Michigan. We're challenging this policy directive on 3 bases, principally. Under our right to freedom of speech, because this has a chilling effect on our rights. It's going to subject to surveillance for engaging in constitutionally protected activity, government scrutiny. It violates our First Amendment right to expressive association. It's no doubt going to have a chilling effect on those who want to associate with us. Who wants to associate with a criminal hate organization, right? Because now if the Michigan AG's office, the prosecution office of the state is involved, then we must be, a criminal organization for us to be specifically identified. And we're challenging it on equal protection grounds because the basis for her targeting us is our political viewpoint. Everything we engage in is lawfully protected by the U.S. Constitution, but yet we're now in the sights of the Michigan Attorney General because she disagrees with our political viewpoints. That is dangerous. That's the thought police. That's what we're going to try to stop.
Very dangerous. Robert, I want to say thank you for your service, first off. And secondly, I just, as you were talking through that, I wonder how many other states are paying close attention to your lawsuit to determine whether they follow suit with what the Michigan AG did in creating their own thought police.
Yes,
So,
I think that's very much. In fact, there was I forget. I got a reporter had contacted me. I think he might have even been from Bloomberg or a real large news source, and he was tracking this across the country. And he was really interested in our lawsuit because he sees this as really sort of the epicenter. Because this is really the first time that a state attorney general is relying on the Southern Poverty Law Center, so-called hate list and hate map. And in his sense, from his research, is that what happens here could have repercussions in other states like New York, California, the ones that you would expect, Massachusetts.
Minnesota.
I wouldn't expect, Texas, Oklahoma, or any of those, those places to follow suit. But certainly, there's a long list of other states that could be following this, depending on our success here in Michigan. So this is an important issue to fight. It's very interesting because how I found out about it, because the release came out, the official announcement came out on a Friday afternoon, which is typically when they want to release that type of information. And I got a voice message from a reporter from the Free Press who wanted my comments. It was the Detroit News. Wanted my comments about the fact that now the Attorney General has considered us a criminal organization, is going to come after us. So that really, even from that reporter's question, what the public perception is of what the Michigan Attorney General's office is doing. And I remember that weekend, I was fuming mad.
Yeah, I bet.
I think it was like Sunday evening. I came down to my wife. I said, "I'm going to sue him. I'm not going to stand for this." And so that's one of the benefits of being a lawyer or a Marine with a law degree, is that sometimes you just sit back and you're watching this stuff go on. You're shaking your head. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Well, I file civil rights litigation, civil rights lawsuits, and we've had some good success. So
excellent.
I'm just not going to. And that's the other point. We don't win every one of our cases. And anyone who says they win all their cases, they're either a liar or they take easy cases. So, but it's important just to be in the fight. It's important to say, we're going to stand up to this nonsense, and I'm going to take a couple of swings. And I might only land a couple of punches, but I'm going to land a couple of punches. Even if I don't win the fight, I want you to know that we're in the fight, and we're not just going to go away.
Well, good. We're excited that you're doing this, because this definitely needs to be confronted and stopped. Do you think the disruption going on at the SPLC right now is going to do anything to enable you to be more successful? Do you think they're going to have any changes in the SPLC that will stop them in terms of what they're doing and destroying the conservatives out there?
Yeah, I certainly hope so, because there's a couple of things with our lawsuit. The other thing about these lawsuits is they bring to public light certain issues that people who might not be paying attention to it are now paying a little closer attention. Because one thing about civil litigation is you get a lot of earned media. People want to cover the lawsuit, they want to know, and so people are learning a little bit more about the Southern Poverty Law Center. And what is this organization all about? And why is our Attorney General relying on this group? And the fact that the Southern Poverty Law Center is now imploding, I think, is even of greater benefit. Because you see, Morris Dees was fired unceremoniously in March. The president resigned. The head legal director resigned. There's this great article in the New Yorker, of all things, of somebody who had been working at the Southern Poverty Law Center, just disclosing what goes on there.
Oh.
Just the harassment that goes on inside, the fact that this is just a money-making machine. The more we can expose, darkness to light, the more we will succeed. Because the Southern Poverty Law Center is dark. They are a dark organization. They've had this past history that's given them a semblance of legitimacy, but it's only just a kernel of legitimacy. Most of them is illegitimate political propaganda nonsense. And I'm hoping, that as more is being brought to light about the Southern Poverty Law Center, the more the media actually learns about it, the more that people become aware that this is an illegitimate group, and that they start calling on the media to stop relying on them, for these financial institutions to stop relying on them. We were part of a group of nonprofit organizations across the country. There were 67 of us who signed and sent out an open letter to all financial institutions, national media organizations, and others to stop relying on the Southern Poverty Law Center. We went through detailed all the problems that this organization is having, and that they are an illegitimate organization and they should not be given the light of day. And so all this is happening all at the same time. So I think it's all beneficial, because our law, part of the reason why we bring these lawsuits that I mentioned in the public interest, is they're an opportunity to teach the public too about what our constitutional rights
Exactly.
are. So that's why it's important to do as much media as we can, like our interview today, so that people can become informed and know what's going on. I think the media mostly relies on people being uninformed.
Right.
And so the more they get informed, the more we can bring to light this evil that's going out there and the harms that this is going to cause, not just to my group, but to everyday Americans whose constitutional rights are going to be trampled upon. If she's willing to do this, the Michigan Attorney General, I mean, this is weaponizing the Attorney General's office is super dangerous, and we need to put a stop to that. So there's so much that goes into these cases that goes far beyond just winning a particular issue in court. There's a learning component of it. There's the protection of the public interest. And I hopefully through this, win or lose, the American people become more aware of the Southern Poverty Law Center and how this our Michigan Attorney General is really a weaponizing her office in a way that next election cycle, hopefully the voters will bear in mind that this is not a person who's qualified for that job and should be removed. What's
been her response?
Oh, glad you asked, because it's we filed our complaint the very next week. We filed it on the 28th. She announced the policy on the 22nd. We filed our lawsuit on the 28th, and then that I finally spoke with that reporter from the Free Press, and she wrote actually a very good article, very objective, can't complain, about the lawsuit and about American Freedom Law Center and all the aspects of our particular lawsuit. Well, the Michigan Attorney General didn't say, oh, well, I apologize, we're not going after groups like the American Freedom Law Center, this is only about going, she didn't make any public apology or mea culpa, or we didn't intend this to be viewed that way. No, this is what she said, and I'm going to read directly this is from her Facebook. And I actually amended my complaint to add this. This is what she said in her Facebook post, and she was referring specifically to our lawsuit because she hyperlinked put in the link of the the Detroit News article, and she said, quote, "Only in Trump's America do you get sued for pledging to prosecute hate crimes and pursue organizations that engage in illegal conduct against minority communities. I will never back down on my commitment to protect the safety of all Michiganders. Bring it." And so her spokesperson must be like, Miss Nessel, her name's Dana Nessel, stop talking about these things. Because all she did here was confirm that she considers us to be a hate organization, to engage in criminal activity against minorities, and that she's not backing down, and she wants us to bring it. So we're bringing it, Dana Nessel. So you just keep talking. That's the one thing with these hardcore left-wing liberals. They like to run their mouths, and she does. And so I've seen some reports from the spokesperson now backing away from the whole Southern Poverty Law Center. But they can't, because they already put the links in their press release. They already expressly said so. And, Dana Nessel admitted as much in a Facebook post directly talking about our particular lawsuit. So we'll see how this works out. So you can see that she's not there's no contrition. If anything, she's doubling down. And which is good, because I like a good fight.
Robert, we are called Sharia Crime Stoppers Action Line, and we try to get our listeners to not just get educated, but to take action. Wow, you are the action. You are taking the action, and this is a great example for us that people need to take action. I'll just go back. If you did not file the lawsuit, we would be, Sharia Crime Stoppers has a Michigan connection. We would be having this conversation. Theoretically, the hate crime director and her investigator could be collecting information, building a database about this interaction, acknowledging the fact that we do what we do, etc. And we could continue to be under the shadow to basically get us to shut up and not talk about specifics related to Islam and Sharia compliance and the incredible changes that have already happened and are happening in Michigan. So your action is critical. I want to make the point. I know you live in Michigan. It's not far from where you are and where the Sharia Crime Stoppers roots in Michigan are from the country of Canada. Canada already has these kind of aggressive indictments and against private citizens who speak out. And we have listeners to this program who are from Canada who keep sending us information about that situation. So to the extent that the newly elected Attorney General and Governor of the state of Michigan choose to behave in a Marxist way, just like Trudeau in Canada, in a way, they're pursuing a North American concept without a border between Canada and Michigan, Canada and Minnesota. So I guess this notion of the incremental use of lawfare is a Marxist strategy that works in Canada big time and could work in Michigan, could work in Minnesota, etc. And that it's so important that you've issued this lawsuit. I mean, it is precedent setting. I think you're prepared for a difficult process, perhaps in the state of Michigan, and you'll pursue it wherever you need to go if, in fact, the complaint is denied in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, we will. And, the unfortunate thing, obviously, for Canada and the fortunate thing for us is we have this thing called the First Amendment,
right?
Which, our constitutional protections. But, Ronald Reagan reminded us, back in the 80s, that our constitutional freedoms weren't handed down to us, through one generation to the next. They must be fought for and protected during each generation, lest they be lost. And so it's important that, if you don't, it's like muscles, right? You don't exercise them, you're going to lose them. And if we're not exercising these First Amendment rights and standing up for them, we're going to lose them. And, just to give you an idea how insidious this could be, I mean, we've seen it on the national level play out with this whole Mueller investigation. It's starting to learn what was going on behind the scenes, the intelligence agencies, the FBI, and these other law enforcement agencies really abusing the powers that they have to conduct surveillance, to do, a host of other things that were politically motivated. And you can see how disastrous that can be. Well, to me, this is sort of a smaller scale, not a smaller scale, but on the state level, what the Attorney General, Dana Nessel, is attempting to do. And, we need to put a stop to it. Too quickly we see this idea of so-called hate speech, which, by the way, as a constitutional lawyer, I can guarantee you there is no category under the First Amendment called hate speech that's excluded from its protection. And rightly so, because who determines what's considered hate speech, right? That's what the Southern Poverty Law Center is trying to do. They say, well, this is all hate speech. You say something critical of Islam, it's hate speech. If you say marriage is between one man and one woman, it's hate speech. If you quote, cite Leviticus with regard to, God's declaration of what homosexual acts are, you're a preacher, that's hate speech. Well, and then the next thing you know, hate speech morphs into hate crimes, right? And that's really what Dana Nessel's doing. She's making this point that, look, if you're going to engage in this speech that we disagree with, you are now crossing that line from free speech to hate speech to being a criminal organization engaging in criminal acts against minority communities, and Big Brother's watching you. Well, we have a First Amendment that protects our right to speak our mind on issues and express our political viewpoints, whether they are popular or unpopular. In fact, it's the unpopular speech that requires the most protection under the First Amendment. And so that's what this case is, just to fortify our First Amendment protections. And that's what we do at the American Freedom Law Center.
Can you help us understand how people who are interested in this can follow the case, where they can get more information about your organization as this proceeds through the justice system? What would be a good way for people to follow you through a website and so on?
Right. Our website is AmericanFreedomLawCenter.org, O-R-G, and we try to keep it up to date on the latest cases. We have a case link where you can go to that case, and we typically will update it with recent filings. We have a Facebook page. You can, right through our website, you can go to the Facebook. Facebook tends to have things updated a lot quicker. When new information comes in, we'll post it up there. They can go to our website and sign up for our email alerts, and you'll get periodic alerts from us. We try not to bombard everybody's inbox with an inordinate number of emails, but we do send out alerts to announce important developments in cases, new cases, and so forth. So those are probably three ways, mostly through the internet. The beauty of the internet is to keep people informed that they can do that. And and if I can put a plug, if they like the work we do and want to support us, as I mentioned, all our legal work is pro bono. We don't charge one client a penny for the work we do. We rely on generous donations from people who want to support our work. And if any of your listeners are so inclined to do so, on our website, there's a safe, secure way to do that as well. So we would appreciate that as well.
Liza Jane, do you have any closing comments that you want to make?
Well, no, I think he just finished up with what I was going to ask him to do, is promote and tell everybody how they can make donations. So is it just on your website they can donate, or can they do it through Facebook as well? Or
there's places on Facebook where you can donate. Facebook, I think, takes a percentage of that in some respects. So the best way to go is to go through our website. We have a secure link. You can donate through PayPal. You can use credit card. It has an address there if you want to do it the old-fashioned way and put a check in the mail and drop it in. We are recognized by the IRS as a 501c3, so all donations are fully tax deductible in accordance with the law.
Perfect. Good. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew how to do that. And that's excellent. Actually surprised you're still able to function on PayPal, but good for you. Probably afraid to tackle you.
And just one quick caveat or a side note to the point about tackling you. I did an interview with a student newspaper from the University of Michigan, which, as you could expect, is kind of left-leaning. And after the interview, and it was a student journalist, and I kind of gave him a little bit of a nudge. I said, "Look, are you going to be objective?" And I've read a lot of your articles on your website, the Michigan Daily, and they're not very objective. And I could tell he was like a little bit taken aback. It's like, that's your role as a journalist or a future journalist. You're a student, and so the story came out. It was actually a pretty decent story, but it was funny. At first, the title was Ann Arbor-based hate group sues Attorney General, and then immediately after it went up, I saw that somebody put a giant correction and said group identified by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate group, because everybody over there was afraid that, oh no, the Michigan Daily, we can't call them a hate group. That's the Southern Poverty. So they corrected the title. So you can have an impact when you put a little fear in somebody. I think he probably saw the article go up and called his editor and said, "You got to change that title. These guys are going to sue us. We're not calling it a hate group." And so they put an immediate correction. So I thought that was it was actually good. So I thought it was good to see that's has an effect.
That's good. We are blessed to have you do what you do, because I know you've been very influential with American Laws for American Courts as well across many states. So I just feel so blessed that you are taking on the cases that you are taking, and I pray people will go out and donate to help keep you going.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do.
It's a blessing to have this opportunity. That's really, I look at it every day as I'm blessed to have this opportunity. God gave me certain gifts and talents, and I want to use them to build His kingdom here on earth.
You're still doing Marine work, protecting the Constitution.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And thank you.
Just change uniforms.
That's right.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
God bless.
Thank you. You too.
Enemies foreign and domestic, enemies within. That's what you're focusing on. I'm glad we have a Marine with a law degree on our side. And with that, we'll say goodnight to our audience and just follow the case and thank God we've got the American Freedom Law Center on our side. Good night.